All right. This is something new. I think we're streaming. All looks good. Okay. Welcome to AI Agent Dev School Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. This time we're going to be Electric Boogaloo is just I don't know, a joke. It's a reference. You can Google it. I'm going to be responding to people in. So if you would like to come and be part of AI Agent Dev School and interact with us interactively right now live on stream, please hop into the Discord stage, join the chat. And if you're wondering why I'm like just jumping off into random stuff and responding to stuff, it's because I'm probably responding to the people who are talking in the Discord. So I'll answer a few questions if you guys have any starting questions, and then we're going to get into what we're doing today. Um, so, like Boya has a question: did Twitter authentication change since the November releases? I really hope not, but you might want to try deleting your cookies and looking for if you have a database, you might have to introspect it and clear your cookies for your Twitter stuff. If anybody else has any other questions before we get started, I'm just looking through. Um, I don't see too much yet, but I think we'll have a Q&A at the end. So also save your questions for the end. And then if anybody wants to go into the Agent Dev School chat, we had made a few things we wanted to make sure we go over and cover. Um, and let's see, some of those things are hosting multiple agents and making a new provider, dynamic data injection. So why don't we can do that. We'll say new plugin, and then we'll make like just a provider example, just something silly, like very hello world. And then we can get into the deeper stuff. And maybe if we have time, we'll talk about hosting. Um, I don't have any host stuff set up right now, but maybe that's something we can kind of figure out. Okay, let me just go back to the stage channel. Um, Cool. Is Dev School one knowledge needed to tune into this? That is a good question. I would say it's definitely going to be helpful, but what we're going to do now is much more hands-on. I'm going to struggle through this. I actually have not made these things. I'm just going to be like a developer trying to figure this out on my own with you. It's going to be a little bit of I bet you halfway through we get stuck on something a little stressful, but it'll be kind of fun. We're Gonzo. We're like just shooting from the hip here. Um, so you don't have to know Dev School 1 stuff, but you'll definitely want to if you have never coded before. But here we're actually just going to dive into like a few of the abstractions, how they work, and we'll actually like manipulate them. And this will be like so. There's kind of two elements, right? There's a character agent. Oh, I want my character to be funny and say cool stuff. And there's a capability agent. Like I want my agent to do cool things, like order me a pizza or hack the CIA or something. And actually, you can combine those two, right? Like you want your agent to have a certain vibe when he's doing some agent hacking stuff, right? Like obviously, it'd be cool to have cool hacker man also have the capability to do that other hacker man stuff. So, as an example, obviously, um, it could be whatever you want. But what we really explored in the first of these series was characters. How do we edit the character? How do we make it kind of say what we want it to say? And what we're exploring here is now like, okay, but what actually like can this framework do? Like literally, what can my agent do? And I think that this is a big open question for a lot of people who are just kind of getting into this. And that's really what I want to try to kind of focus on today. So we're just going to review the docs and do a little refresher of a few different abstraction. One of those abstractions is plugins. What is a plugin? How does it work? Another abstraction is providers, which is data in. Another abstraction is actions, which is things the agent can do. And then finally, we'll look at evaluators. Now, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get to evaluators today, but I would really like to. So I think what we're going to do is do a very basic set up a new plugin. We're going to add a provider to it, which just says like add some data that could be not dynamic, and then we'll talk about how we can make it dynamic. Then we'll make a really simple action, and that action will be well, what I'd really like to do is I have a current news API, and I'd kind of like to like just get that maybe um, does do hello world, and then then we try to implement more complex stuff, right? So this is kind of what we're going to try and do. Let's just review the docs really quick. So, um, got Google Chrome, and we go to ai16z.github.io/Eliza. Oh, can't see my screen. Okay, I'm getting a response that you can't see my screen. Is that true? Looks like it's working for me. Um, just let me know if you guys can see my screen. It's showing in Discord. Is it not showing in on stream? Give me a second, guys. It should be showing my Discord right now. Like I am in Discord right now on the stream. And then if I go to cursor, you guys see that I am in cursor right now, right? Holy shit. Okay. Um, one second. Let's just change this. We're gonna stop sharing. Share entire screen. Um, am I now sharing my screen? Okay. So now you guys can see cursor. Great. Okay, that's good. Well, luckily I didn't show too much before that, but I was like typing some stuff out. But it looks like we're in good shape. Okay, cool. Looks good. Tech is hard. So this is our docs page, right? And I highly recommend. I know that it's 2024 and people don't read the docs anymore and they just like go talk to an AI and that's it. But like I'm telling you, we've actually put a lot of effort into this part, especially Jin has put a lot of effort into this part. And it would make him very happy and also the rest of us, but mostly Jen, if you actually went and read the docs. And there are some great documentation here for everything from basics to like pretty advanced. Like, how do I launch this? There's a lot of stuff in here, I think, in more of the advanced topics and guides. This is pretty useful. Then the stuff we're going to focus on today, though, is pretty core concepts, right? We covered character files a lot. This is sort of a character file style. Definitely read this if you missed it. Um, we're kind of going to talk about the runtime here. This is pretty useful, but we're really going to focus on these three things. And I went over this a little bit at the end of the last one, but this is actually what we're going to dive into today. It's providers, actions, and evaluators. There's a lot of other abstractions that are could be in agents. A popular abstraction is tools. And the idea is that implicitly the agent uses tools. And I think that's a pretty good abstraction for like certain systems. But I found in production that I actually liked a different kind of thing where I liked Amazon Echo, where it could basically identify what you're trying to do and then call that specific intent and then call the action associated with that intent. And so we have kind of a phase of like, let's identify what the agent is trying to do, which is called intent or intent recognition. And then let's actually go have it do something, which is action recognition, like the actual action execution. And what you see in like GPT tools, like I don't know, OpenAI GPT tools, um, is that you're basically asking for a response and then it's deciding what tool and it's replying with the actual tool use, kind of all at the same time. Like if you it's kind of hard to I just go find this, but basically like if you use the GPT OpenAI assistant, right? It has a certain number of tools that you can use. And I just think that this is like not a great abstraction. It's got file search, code interpreter, and function calling. It's a fine abstraction for these really big, broad things like this. But the reality is that I don't want the model to both decide what the tool is and also decide how to use it at the same time. I just can't give it that much capability if this is the case. I know this is like a really convoluted advance. Like this is kind of deep theory, like just from grinding agents for a long time, I came to this conclusion. But my conclusion was that if I had 10 tools here and the model can pick from any of them, it starts to really dilute the capability and also like limit me from much more advanced kinds of workflows and stuff. So we ended up like not using any of this and building our own system where when our agent responds, it can call an action and like responding is even one of the actions. We have a new pull request in that will unify this, but essentially it could respond to the user. It could go generate an image and then send that back to the user. It could respond to the user and then keep going and respond to the user again, like the continue action. Or it could go order you a pizza and let you know that you ordered that pizza. So the action handling is kind of two steps. We say, okay, we have this long thing. The agent, like somebody sent the agent a message, like, Shaw, hey, what's up? Right? And the agent responds with, well, it can respond with text, it can respond with an action. It can also respond with some things like in reply to, stuff like that. But what we really care about is these two, right? Like, is it responding with some text? Um, and is it responding with an action? Right? Does that make sense? So, um, if I like look at, well, let's just look at an action. I mean, do we want to start with actions? Hmm, maybe. I think so. I think we'll start with an action because that's kind of like what an agent can do is probably the most obvious kind of starting point, right? So, other teams and stuff will give you these abstractions like, oh, we can call tools. We call that actions, and actions can be total workflows. You could say like, okay, I need to go hack the CIA, right? Or I need to go on-chain sleuth somebody because I have like an AI Zach XPT. And you'd have an action which would be like sleuth. And then that action though could be like, okay, let's go check. Have we already sleuthed this person? Are we already like in progress on that? Okay, we're not. We want to sleuth them. It can go kick off some like new stuff in the server, like, hey, go scrape some, all this information from these different APIs. Go like get the meta sleuth stuff, put it all together, then run an LLM, then determine if it's valid. Then if it is valid, continue on. And if it's not, go tell the user, hey, I couldn't, and you can have this entire workflow that gets kicked off, right? So it's not just like, oh yeah, I searched a file or like, cool, I'm gonna run the code interpreter. It's like I could go do something for like 4 hours and get back to you. Like it could be a whole system of stuff. And typically if you're building like an agent, you probably want that to be a little bit less deep since you're like other people are maybe interacting with the agent or there's other ways to like you could just run that script, I guess. But generally, like, know that an action could be really complex. It can pull in additional information. It can cancel itself. So it doesn't, you can have like, are you sure you really want to do that action? There's a whole lot of other things that we could do. And that's why we have this kind of action abstraction, which is that we're taking that capability out of the model and making it a second step. But then we can like do all this cool stuff with. That doesn't require the model to know too much about our actions or to like have all the definitions up front. It can just be like, okay, cool, you got 5 actions. Seems reasonable that you asked me to generate an image. I'll just call the generate image action, no problem. And then what that actually means, what the values are for that generate image, that can all be done separately, right? So sometimes you're paying for two LLM calls as opposed to where you might just get one if you're using like the assistant API tools. But generally, this works way better for complex agents doing complex things, right? Um, so um, coming back to this, we have going back to our docs. We have actions, right? And actions have a name, and that name is what gets called. It also has similes. Similes are similar names that sometimes when a small model hallucinates, it might call the instead of the actual action name. This is just something we found in production. If you're using a 3 billion parameter model, it might just really like saying respond instead of continue. And you could then say, okay, well, let's make the simile for that continue action, like respond or respond again or whatever. Um, and so this is just something that you could probably ignore similes unless you find you're using a small model and it's literally hallucinating a different action name or something, which ideally is not a long-term thing, but it's certainly a short-term kind of problem we've had. Not super important. This could be empty if you wanted to. The name is definitely important, though. That's ideally what action gets called. The description is going to be injected into the context so that the agent can see both the name and the description of the action. I'll try and log this so you can see how that works and where it is. And this is actually telling the agent how to call this action. Like if the user asks you to generate an image, call this generate image action. Or you could say, if you are inspired by the user to generate this image, call this action, but don't call it if the user directly asks you to generate an image, for example, right? And then it might not be super likely to generate an image unless it quote unquote feels inspired. But that could be based more on the conversation and not just directly on calling the action, right? So you can basically set how you want the action to be used by the agent or what the conditions are for it to decide to call that action by using the description, since that's like the information that actually goes into the context of the model and is what it actually sees about this action in that first step, right? The action hasn't been called yet, but when the action is called, we'll go and do everything that's inside of that action. The only thing the model knows when it's like responding or running in the autonomous loop is that there is a name of an action and there is a description of what the action is and when to use it. We also have examples. And the examples are added in at the top of our context to prepare the model to see examples of actions in use. And this should be both like examples of how you might use it and as well as might not use it. So you could have action examples for generate image. They're like, hey, yo, generate me an image, and it generates. And you could also be like, hey, like I am thinking about my dog. And then it'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to generate an image for that because you're just talking about your dog. Okay, cool. Then we have two more bits. We have the action handler, and again, don't worry, we're gonna actually make this. We're gonna build this from scratch. We're not just gonna talk about it. We have the action handler, which is the actual action code. This is what runs when you call the action. And then we have the validate. And what validate does is it checks, should I add this action into the current context? For example, if you have like a 3D agent walking around the world and you want an action for like uh I don't know, open the shell on a computer, right? Well, it might be like, well, but you're not in front of a computer, so I can't open the shell on a computer. This action is not valid in this context, right? And so that validation says, is this action at this moment even available to the user? And so we can have actions that are only available if other actions have triggered or if other states are true. You can use different actions with different validator conditions to create a lot of interesting logic, right? So that's the basic interface. And we'll get into actually making one of those in just a second. I just wanted to kind of go over all this and then we're going to make some. Um, the other one we have here is a provider, and this is providers in programming are fairly straightforward. They usually provide what's called state to the whatever is underneath them. We have this in like React. We have context providers, which then allow different parts of the application to like get some sort of important piece of state, which is like any kind of data that's just getting passed around the application. And this is kind of following a similar pattern, right? So if actions are things that agents can do, providers are things that agents can see or read or know or information coming in, right? Actions are action going out, agents doing stuff. Providers are the eyes and ears, and literally anything that the agent knows is either coming from like the built-in context, like injecting the latest conversation, stuff like that, or from a provider, right? Which could be the latest news or my wallet balances and stuff like that, right? So those are common uses of providers. And the provider is very simple. Unlike the actions where there's all this stuff, the provider is just always going to be pulling in, and the validation happens in this one function, which is get. So if you're like, okay, I want to check if this provider is valid, like let's say I don't know, if I have a wallet, then show the wallet contents, right? So you could have that if statement inside the provider, and if there's no wallet, just return null, and then it will just like be ignored. But if I do have a wallet, then return the contents of that wallet, right? As like a formatted string that the then can like go into my context. If you think about what context is, just because I keep saying that word a lot, it's basically like whatever you type into ChatGPT, right? Or Claude. Anything that goes in here, right? Whatever, that's all context. Um, so it can be anything, but a lot of what we do is managing this dynamically. So when I say context, I mean like literally what goes in to get the response back out. I noticed it appears to be random characters. It's pretty smart. So obviously, if I prepared something really, really crazy, it would probably give me a pretty good answer. And what I'm preparing for this is the context. And then this is the response, which we'll also sometimes call a completion. Um, cool. So you can see that the provider dynamically adds things into the context. And a good example is the time provider. You can see it gets the current date. it gets the current time, it gets the current year, and then it gives you back a string into the context, which is the current time and current year. And that way, if you're like, what day is it? Or it's making a joke, it actually knows, like, oh man, I fucking hate Tuesdays or whatever it is, right? And it kind of gives that context. You could use this to build whole knowledge systems that ground your agent and, in the world it's in, and that could all be through a knowledge provider, for example. Cool. And then we have one last major abstraction here that gives functionality, which is the evaluator. And the way that an evaluator works is that it runs every time the agent does something. So you send a message, the agent responds, then it calls the evaluator. Or the agent's running in a loop, it does something, does whatever to itself, then it calls the evaluator. And we can use this to basically have the agent reflect on its current state or reflect on whatever it just did, right? So evaluator is in traditional papers, AI agent paper. There's a thing called reflection, an X. This is a great paper, language agents with verbal reinforcement learning. And basically, what they found was that if the agent went back and said, "Wait, but is that right? Is that what I want to do? Am I sure?" It could actually reflect and build up a reflection of like how it felt it did, and this would dramatically increase its ability to be coherent over time, as well as to like actually solve problems instead of like like try problems multiple times and continue them. This is it basically just increases the by showing reflection, we got way better scores on a lot of the typical evals. And we're not doing this exact thing, but spiritually this is very, very similar to how the evaluator is working, right? Like after I've done something, let's see how we did. So you have a question. Can you have evaluators trigger as part of the handler set to an evaluate an action before they take them? Um, so it's a confusing thing because we have only so many words to determine so many things that are happening. But in the flow, at least as it should be, and I'm going to make sure is architecturally sound this week, the evaluator happens after the action calls and probably after the action returns, although there's no guarantee since actions could kick off things that happen asynchronously. But the evaluator will then look at the state after the action has happened and occurred, and then it will reflect on basically the whole conversation and anything that happened and try to run whatever the evaluator is in as a result. So a good example of this is the fact evaluator. So in order to manage long conversations, instead of trying to go through and keep the whole conversation or retrieve sections of the conversation with RAG, what we're doing is we're extracting all of the facts. We also extract all of the opinions and what we call statuses. Like, oh yeah, I'm so tired right now. It's not really a fact about you. It's more of like a current status. And I love that, like in Spanish, they have this kind of like, some of the words have sort of a difference between like how you're doing and like where you live or I don't know, I'm doing a terrible job of this, but basically like some languages can capture this idea of like there's sort of an in the moment fact versus like just an always continuously true fact, right? And so the fact extractor goes and looks at the conversation and extracts like, well, what are the opinions, what are the facts, what are the statuses, and then it just saves the facts. And actually, what we're doing here as a trick is kind of like using this to differentiate and bin things and then just take the thing we care about. What I really care about is in the long run of conversation, extracting facts about the person that are true about them. And while they could be updated and with newer facts later, for example, like, oh, I bought a red Lambo. Like, oh, that's sick. Like, cool. Charles got a red Lambo. It's just like a thing. Now you just have that associated. And then next year, I'm like, yeah, I sold the red Lambo and I bought like, I don't know, a yellow Tesla. Like, okay, cool. So, now you no longer have a red Lambo, but you have a yellow Tesla. Those facts are timestamped. So it's like, okay, well, you were talking about cars, and I just pulled up all the relevant facts about cars, and I see that well, 2 years ago you had a red Lambo, and you were talking about it, and now you have a yellow Tesla, and the LLM is actually getting that information, and so the fact evaluator is extracting the factual information with a timestamp so that we then have another section, which is the fact provider, which brings back the relevant facts into the context. So, in the way that we had talked about the provider, these two things work together really well. The evaluator can extract data, and the provider can inject data, right? So we have a fact provider, which then goes and you can see it's here, just provides the most recent relevant facts, right? Um, we have recent facts. I think this is not giving us relevant facts here. Maybe we'll add that. But this can have recent facts and relevant facts, right? So yeah, that's kind of how we pull that in. We also have a thing called a boredom provider. This is kind of an interesting thing. The idea with the boredom provider is that if your agent starts looping in a cringe loop with another agent, it'll start to get anxiety and want to exit the conversation, for example. Um, yeah, I'm being accused of being very anti-American by my official troll. Welcome. Welcome to the space. All right. For buying a, for selling a red Lambo and getting a yellow Tesla. I don't know, whatever. Something terrorism. Okay. Okay, cool. So the evaluators are basically like continually running and extracting the information you might want. And we can use this for extracting facts. And another thing we use this for is extracting trust, right? Like, how does the agent actually, like, how does our AI mark investor listen to users? Well, when they're showing a contract address or saying, oh, yeah, I bought a bag of that, or don't buy that, that's a scam, that's then getting run into the evaluator, which is looking at the most, like all of the most recent contexts, and it's like, oh, they said they bought a bag, but what they're referring to is obviously the contract address that like two messages earlier somebody had posted, like, yo, check out this new, I don't know, chill girl or something. Oh yeah, totally got a bunch of that, but I'm sorry, I'm like a week late on the meta. I haven't been paying attention, but you know what I mean. Buy some fucking whatever the popular meme coin is today, people are talking about it. And then Mark is running that extraction on any new references. But because he has the whole conversation, he can know that when you say, oh, yeah, I bought a bag, you're talking about the bag from the thing that was like five messages before. It's not perfect, but it's pretty uncanny, right? And then he can extract that, make his paper trades, and build the trust database off of this. And so the trust evaluator is actually the thing that's kind of driving the entire trust mechanism. And it's not particularly complicated. It's just more that it has some tricks to make sure it's pulling the right information and it's not like duplicate pulling the same kind of recommendations every single time. So yap, yap, yap. There's a lot of stuff in here, creating custom evaluators. All the docs are here and pretty good. And also, if you're like really lazy, you can always just like come here, copy paste, Claude, paste it in, like, hey, can you make me an evaluator that um, records every time someone says hello world? And, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this way. I'd go and actually find some evaluators and paste them in as well. But like this right here is probably the best way to use docs. I highly recommend this. Like, it's pretty freaking good. You can see it's like, okay, we have an evaluator. It's got a name. It's got the similes and description. We actually don't need similes in the evaluator. We should look at that. Only in the actions. It's got the validate. It's got the handler. Does all the stuff. Um, Good deal. It's got some examples, and that's pretty much it, right? Like I have a Hello World evaluator, and you can see that if the message content is nothing, return like only return true if this is if the message includes Hello World, and then if it does, then it's valid, and it will run this evaluator. Then call the handler deal, right? Um, Looking hot. And anyway, so. Claude is really useful for making these things. A big part of what we're doing is trying to make it so that we have these simple, repeatable patterns so that we can fine tune models and like feed it all into Claude and have it generate new actions on the fly for itself, right? Like that's obviously a big part of AGI in the future will be that it's creating its own code and then asking you to verify it. Um, but for right now, we have like that's kind of why things are structured this way. Okay, so we have providers, actions, and evaluators. Those are our three primitives that we use for like making complex agents. There's a couple of other sort of primitives to understand that kind of wrap that. Well, one that doesn't wrap it, but that engages it is the client. And the idea of a client, if I go into cursor, you can see we have a lot of packages. And you can see we have a lot of clients. And those clients are Twitter, a terminal, Telegram, GitHub. Farcaster, Discord, a direct client, which is like a REST client, and then Auto, which is like an autonomous loop. And that's pretty, we just started that, but the idea will be that you can register like workloads to run in an auto loop if you want. Um, Something we're working on next, and we just had a big council meeting about, is that we're unifying the underlying message architecture so that clients will be able to send to other clients. And that way, if you're like walking around your day and your agent's like walking in a 3D world and then it gets attacked, you could actually like send a tweet like, "Man, that guy's such an asshole. Why did he attack me?" Or it could be like hit up Discord and be like, "Hey, can you guys help me out? Like I'm getting attacked right now." Well, I'm just, throwing out some sci-fi concepts, but you can imagine that like we'll have a unified message bus soon, and then the clients really just become about the input and output to these different connectors. Right now, they have their own internal loops and they're kind of driving like, a lot of the perceived autonomy of the agent. Like the Twitter post client just posts in a loop. But pretty soon that will not be the case. And I think like Roperito is working on this a lot with his life engine. And a few other people have been thinking about this kind of thing. But pretty soon, like that's what clients will be is your agent does whatever it wants, and then it's just like, oh, I got some information on Discord. Okay, I'll go send it out to Telegram. You can do those kinds of interesting, complex message routings. But for now, think of a client as a way to connect to the outside world, right? We also have these things called adapters, and they should be called DB adapters. I just felt like you get the idea. And the adapters talk to data sources. Right now, those are all SQL driven. We have Postgres, SQLite, SQLJS, and Supabase, which is also just a wrapper for Postgres. But we could also have Mongo. We could have blockchain. Like you could have an adapter just straight up to freaking IPFS if you wanted to, or to, um, just to store things on a smart contract or recall them. It could be whatever you wanted. I think that obviously there's a little bit of technical complexity there, but certainly like it doesn't have to be just to this database type. But the idea is that you have some data source you can read and write from. And that adapter then is like an abstraction to talk to that so that the agent just knows, okay, this is the loaded adapter. It's got this functionality. Like I can definitely save a memory and recall a memory at the very least. So I don't really care what's going on with the database side. It's kind of, that's over there. I just know that I can call it if I want to. So you choose which adapter you're going to put into your agent. You have to choose one. And the default is obviously SQLite, right? And the SQLite is a local database. It stores as a file. You can delete it and it will reset it. And everything is going in there. It also supports vector search. We have SQLite vector search. So it gives you all the benefits of a full RAG agent system. It's not really limited in any way. It just happens to be on the same machine, and like you might not like that SQLite is like running on that machine because if the machine dies, you lose all your memories. So a lot of people tend to graduate from SQLite to Postgres. Postgres is its own running database. You could run it on the same machine, but most people run it in the cloud on something like Fly.io or Supabase. There's a few other good ones. And pretty much you just get like a nice managed Postgres experience. You point your agent to that. And if your agent dies, then the database is probably still fine. You can reset all that. And it gives you some ability to administrate the database from the cloud and also plug other applications into it elsewhere that don't even have to talk to your agent, like an app to view the logs or an app to edit the memories. Those could all be just talking directly to the database. Um, I'm getting some references mention a Firebase. I really think we should have a Firebase adapter. Yeah, I think Pinecone sucks because they charge you for RAG, but Firebase has they have a new vector DB integration with Google's thing, what's called Vertex, and that should just be like a normal database cost. I think Firebase is pretty cool for that, but I like Supabase because it's open source and it's built on Postgres. Um, I'm pretty agnostic to this. Use whatever makes you happy. And if you want to make a Firebase adapter, that would be awesome. I'd really love that. Um, so we have adapters, we have clients, and then the last thing that we're going to talk about, and we're probably going to make one, is a plugin. And so what plugins do is wraps all of this. You can have a plugin that has actions, providers, evaluators, and clients, and memory managers and other stuff. So the memory manager is kind of the overall abstraction over a database adapter. Memory manager is like, I want a knowledge manager, I want a conversation manager. And these will then like be able to store information in certain tables. And if you wanted to add like another memory manager for just facts and another memory manager just for relationship history, you could do that and add those to plugins and extend like the internal agent's sort of memory, like or ability to manage different types of data. You know, cool. So plugins are very important. You can see that like actually now most of the code for the agent is getting expressed through the plugins. We have plugins for Starknet, Solana, ICP, Coinbase, EVM, all that stuff. I would really love for someone to use the buttplug plugin. Buttplug.io is a hardware communication layer for any kind of sex toy. I'm not saying, I'm just saying I want to see someone do it. It'd be fucking hilarious. Go nuts. The ones that are really important here that you should know are Bootstrap, right? Bootstrap is like the default stuff that we provide. And you can see it's got like the boredom, the facts, the time. This is all the stuff that's actually in the tutorials. I mean, sorry, in the docs. The facts, the goals, evaluators, you continue, follow room, ignore. Like these are all kind of the basic actions. And I would really recommend if you're starting just like a default agent, you definitely want the Bootstrap plugin. This is like the stuff that you're definitely going to want to put in there. We also have a Node plugin, and the Node plugin adds a lot of the services that you'll need for like local llama completion, browser, image descriptions, so it can describe an image to the model, transcription, speech generation, all the stuff that runs locally. The big problem with this is it has like strong Node.js dependencies and you might not be able to run it in the browser or in certain embedded systems. So we moved a lot of the stuff that like all of our service architecture out into a plugin, right? So all of the Node.js specific stuff is here. If you want to transcribe, like, have the agent summarize a PDF that you upload Discord, you're gonna need the plugin, the Node plugin, because it's gonna add all of the services to do that. We will also have a browser plugin, which then will create browser versions of all of the services. We just haven't gotten to that yet. Although if you'd like to, you're definitely welcome to. The rest of these are pretty they're kind of like ranging from like sort of a community plugin or experimental thing to like a fairly built out thing. We'll probably be moving a lot of the plugins into like a community repo. We'll figure it out. Just it's still in progress. But you don't have to import any of these if you don't want to. But they do give you a lot of cool capability. For example, the TE plugin. Will obviously let you like run this inside of a TE and add some of that functionality. Although in the long run, we're probably going to make TE more of a first class thing than just like a plugin you add. But when you combine it with the existing stuff that like Joshua and the Fala team have worked out with the Docker container deployment, you can have and you integrate the plugin, you get a full TE experience, right? Um, and there's some things like video generation. You might like that. It's kind of cool. You can see it's using Luma, the Luma API. And we also have like image generation. And so you can kind of pick and choose these as you want. But the takeaway here is that the things you definitely want to start with are probably plug in Bootstrap and probably plug in Node unless you're doing a browser thing. And then everything else is pretty optional. Cool. So all of our main code is in this core, by the way. This is where when I say core, or this is like the actual core code. It's a lot less code than some of the plugins even. And you can bring that into the browser, bring it anywhere. It's pretty lightweight. Um, so I just did a little bit of a package overview, kind of covered like adapters, clients, and plugins. Now we're actually going to get into the meat of this. I've been yapping. Um, what I really want to do is make a new plugin, right? And this is going to be called Dev School. And I could just make a new plugin from scratch. I could just be like, okay, a new file or no, it's a new folder, plugin dash Dev School. I don't know. It's going to be a grind, right? I got to like make a package JSON, bunch of stuff. Ugh. So maybe I'll just go and take the Bootstrap plugin, which is already like a thing, and I'll just copy it and then I'll rename it and I'll call it Dev School. And generally, if you're like, I'm going to make a new plugin, I think that just copying and pasting Bootstrap is not the worst idea. Just make sure that when you go in there, you go to the package and you change anything that says plugin Bootstrap. So definitely we'll say plugin dash dev school. And we have some source here. Um, let's say we're just gonna have one of each of these. Uh, we'll just say, I mean, we really don't need like all this stuff, right? Okay, so I've kind of got this, I'm cooking on this new folder here. And instead of, um, well, yeah, I mean, we'll just start here. It's fine. Um, Let me just delete some junk here so that we're not too, we kind of have a nice starter area, not too bloated, something like that. And make sure these indexes are right. This one right here. All right, ship it. It's done. Um, so I now have this plugin. Let's talk about what like how this plugin works. I just wanted to kind of clean up some stuff, and now we can get into the meat and potatoes. I copied and pasted an existing plugin because I just don't want to write all this junk out, and that kind of got me going, right? You can see that every plugin has a package.json. This is an npm thing. It tells it what packages do I need to install and import. It's also has information. If you were to like publish your plugin, this is what the name would be on npm. And all of these, I don't know if all the plugins can be packaged and published, maybe most of them, but we can actually see on npm that they do get published. And if we go to AI16Z, you can see that we have all of these. I love that Rom Lord is doing it programmatically. Every time we tag a new release and we publish it, you can see it gets this tag and it's here. And you can actually npm install like, oh, I want the GitHub client in my agents. You go cd agent pm install at ai16z slash plugin dash GitHub. So they're all actually available to you if you're making your own agent from npm. And that's defined in this package.json, right? This right here is how it knows, okay, go get published to it's right here. We have a TS config. This is for TypeScript. You're probably going to ignore this. Like you're probably not going to have to worry about this, but you should know that it imports the core TypeScript config, right? So everything is built off of the core TypeScript config for now, and that way, yeah, if you like, we're like, okay, cool. I kind of want everything to be similar, and this might change in the future, but if I go into this TS config, it has a bunch of stuff, and this all gets kind of inherited into all of the rest of the bundles. So TS config is necessary for TypeScript. We also use TS up, um, and this will lets us do a little bit more configuration of our TS build process. You can see we're externalizing some dependencies. You don't necessarily need this in your plugin. This is just if you run into issues and you need to externalize stuff. You can see that we're doing that there. And then we have the ESLint config. ESLint is what we use to sort of like go through and find any. Linting is the process of like finding anything that could be cleaned up or violates a convention, either in code quality or standards or like formatting. Or we just have rules like, oh, we don't want to allow any, like the use of the any keyword in TypeScript, right? So we could make that a part of our ESLint config. And all of the configs import from a single config. This is like the root config. And so if you wanted to, you could change this, and this would change it for all of the rest of the packages. And you can see we have some like no unsafe function types is off because we don't like that default rule. You can disable rules here. You can change rules here. You know, like prefer const. We could say like error, and that means that if you use let or var instead of const, it would actually prevent you from building. But that seems kind of annoying, so we'll just like warn you, you know. And so just so you know that like this is ESLint. It's part of a you can install it into Cursor or VS Code, and it's kind of an integrated part of your system. And then you could like run pm run lint, and that will actually pm run lint. That will run ESLint and try to fix as many errors as possible and go through and like you can see a lot of the warnings, right? Because we have any's should be warned, no explicit any warn, and that's kind of what you're seeing here, right? So so this is the like the general there's some let's see. Yeah, I'll close that. You can see in our bootstrap, that's pretty much it. The main npm ignore is just like ignore some stuff when you're publishing, so we don't publish the dist or I mean we do. We just make sure that these things are definitely included, basically. Um, and you can see that, yeah, this is like include all and then exclude some things. Um, okay, so most of our source code, though, is going to be in the slash source folder. And I'll show you what the actual plugin interface looks like. It's pretty simple. If I want to make a new plugin, this is the plugin type. You can see it takes a name, description, list of actions, list of providers, list of evaluators, list of services, and clients. Services are something we didn't really talk about. If you look in the plugin node, there's a lot of services. And those services would be like transcription service, speech recognition service, or I guess it's the same, speech generation service, uh, um, PDF reading service, stuff like that. Services that allow us to have this extensible functionality. But because we have different platforms or ways we could like situations where we need to call these services from. Like you just can't call a like file storage service from the browser necessarily. We've built this architecture so you can register your services from your plugins. So if you wanted to add more services and make them available, um, what's an example of like like a browser service, or you might want like a yeah, I think a browser service is a good example. We have a basic one, but maybe you want like a really advanced browser service where your agent can like get the current state and continue on its path. You might register your own browser service for that and build it in your plugin. um, Sorry, as an aside, I didn't really cover services very much. But we're really going to focus on these three: provider, evaluator, and action. um, so inside of this bootstrap, we have the name and the description. The description is not really particularly important right now. I think it's not getting read anywhere, but then it's just like it's kind of self-documenting so that people know what is this freaking plugin. And once we do a plugin registry, this description will be like what people actually read. Everything that gets injected is optional. You actually don't even need any of this. Like this is a valid plugin, right? Kind of weird. It doesn't do anything, but it is a valid plugin and it gets read. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this dev school plugin. Dev school plugin. Cool. Dev school example plugin. And if I publish this to some plugin registry in the future, you'd be like, oh, cool, dev school. Yeah, yeah, of course. And it's got, yeah, that's the dev school example plugin that Sean made. Great. Press the install button. Um, and then obviously we have the actions, evaluators, and providers. So I've got some ideas for what we can do to example these. I think we're going to start with like the really dumb hello world. And something that I probably should have done before this has just been like, well, we should probably make sure our thing works, right? Let's just do npm install and pnpm run build and make sure that we're on the latest. Pnpm install. Just do a little install. And then we can talk about what we're going to do first. So our first action, we're going to call it hello world. And it's just going to like do the dumbest shit, right? Like hello world. And our similes will be like, hello. I don't think we really need any similes. You just be like, fuck it. Yeah, we could do like that though if you wanted to. Okay, cool. We're gonna return true. We could also say like return math thought random is greater than zero point 0.5. So like 50% of the time it could call this. This is like some randomization. Like it can't always call this action. But it's kind of annoying for testing, so we'll just return true. Um, the description. Um, Make a cool hello world ASCII art, right? Just something, whatever. Um, and then for our handler, well, remember this was the none handler, so just like return, we want to do something, right? And what we want is okay, so we have um the handler gets a runtime, a message, a state, options, and a callback. Okay, cool. So we have runtime, message, state, options, callback. So the state is the current state of the application that we've like composed. We could always recompose state, but it's relatively expensive. So we want to make sure that if we are composing state, um, we're doing it at the right times, and then we're passing the state back around as needed, right? Um, so state would be like all recent messages, right? And we like go and we go get all the recent messages, and now we have this like blob of recent messages data. And I don't want to have to go get it again right away. I want to like use it. I want to pass it down. And so I have this state object, and if I look, you can see on the state object, uh, there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? The name of the sender, the name of the bio, the lore, and this is all composed, and then I can pass it down into my action, so I have access to all of that state. If I wanted to, I could be like, well, hmm, actually, I want to create new state, so I'd be like const new state equals, and I was like compose, not compose state. It's going to be. I should probably remember this. Is it create state? I think compose state. It is. And so what I can do is say runtime dot compose state, compose, let me just see another example of it. And we want to compose state with the message, and we could plug in additional data if we wanted to, but it's not necessary. Um, and then I wonder why it's not interesting. It looks like we have that has probably been, let's see, what is it called? Update recent messages state. So, right. So we can like compose the state, right? And we're like, okay, well, we have a new state and we're just going to rebuild the entire thing. Or we can say like, actually, I just want to update the recent messages because I just sent a message back. So then just like update the recent messages state and keep the rest of the state how it was. Now, this is used so much that we just made a function just for doing this. Just like give me the state that was passed in, but then update the messages for it. I'm sorry that's not being very clear, but just so you know, like you can compose state at any time, but probably if you're in an action, you just get the state. You can like do stuff with it. The next thing is options. You could pass options down to an action. This is going to be refactored a bit, and it's only really necessary if you have to pull like specific data that's not in the state down into the action. I don't even know what this is really being called yet, and it might be deprecated. But the really important thing here is the callback. This is like the most important thing to understand of the action because you're going to do some stuff, right? Like, you know, I don't know, do some things, and then you're going to do some more things. And then you might want to like call callback and tell the user like, hey, I'm still doing stuff, right? And then let's see, let's make sure that that's right. It takes a content object. Yeah, that's right. And then you can do some more stuff. And then you could call back again. And so you could say, hey, awesome, I'm about to run this long document search. It's gonna take me like 5 minutes, right? Do that here, like acknowledge them, right? Hey, I'm gonna do something and it's gonna take a while, right? And then I could be like, okay, cool. Like, hey, I did the thing. And here's the result, right? And then say like result. And if I make a const result equals some results, um, oops, helps me spell it right. Then it would like return this text with those results, right? That makes sense. Um, cool. Um, I hope this makes sense. You can do some workload in here. You can send messages back up, back to where they came from. That's what the callback handler is. Do some stuff, and then you can always return more stuff, and then you could end your action, right? This will be the end of the action. You can just return. You actually don't have to return true or false, just return, but it does return a Boolean. And the point of that is that you could know if the action was successful or not. And you could handle, like in the future, we could handle this success and failure cases. So we have a handler. Make a cool hello world ASCII art, right? So why don't we say like um, write out a cool ASCII art of hello world as a string. Maybe it can pull it off. Damn. Holy shit. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Not bad, right? Not bad. Um, it's not perfect, but like I'm going with it, right? And then what we would do is say, okay, cool. And then the callback will be hello world. It will literally just respond with this. So this is a hello world action, right? Um, now what we're gonna here we'll say rewrite action examples to ask for a hello hello world, and we'll see what happens. Oh, um, rewrite action examples to ask for hello world. Ignore text should be empty, and action should be hello world. It's a response text. It doesn't have to be empty, but that's kind of what I'm jamming on. I love Claude. So now we have some examples like, please say hello world in ASCII. And it's like, cool, I'm going to call that, right? Now this user could be agent name since we're, if we want to. It could also just be user two, and then it's randomly showing other potential agents using it. So these user one and user two macros get replaced with random names like Samuel, Millie, and then the next time around it'll be like James and I don't know, Darcy with that, right? And so we randomize all the names every time, and we use these macros in the example to change the names so that we don't get like stuck in any local minima. We do a lot of randomization. One of the things we do is randomize the example names. That's what this user one macro is. It gets replaced with a real name, right? And that name changes every single time it responds. So this is all examples. We want to randomize examples as much as possible. It pulls some of these examples randomly every time, and then it combines all of the examples together and then randomizes the order of them, randomizes the names that are being used, and then puts that into the context. I hope that makes sense. So this is like a complete hello world action, right? Um, sorry guys, I need to drink some liquids. What it's gonna do is if it gets called, it's going to respond with this. Now, this is not very dynamic. This is not very interesting. I know. I know that. But you could imagine, like, well, what if this is get current news, right? And now we're like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. Like, and then I have like a function like function get current news. Um, it's async, obviously. We'll say call news api.org API. We'll say like it'd probably take a string like um, search term with search term, right? And then we could say, okay, cool. Looks good. What did I just do? Cursor fill this out for me. But if you see like newsapi.org/v2, add the search term. I already have an API key in there, but it's not going to work. I'll add that in a second. And then we have the data and everything. Now, and then this current news would just be like, oh wait, get current news, and we'll say dot join with a new line. So this will say, okay, give me the data, slice out the top five, and then join them. And then if I want, it's suggesting this map. Okay, now go map that article down and give me a title, description, URL, and then join each of those by a double new line. This is pretty sweet. God, I fucking love Cursor. Like you saw, that was genius. Um, now I'm wondering why Oxscoped is used before. Is it? I don't know. That's kind of dumb, but I could definitely put this in here. Oh, I see what that's why. So current news equals get current news. And then I'm going to say AI 16Z, right? Why not? Could possibly go. I mean, what kind of news could we possibly have? I'm sure it's positive. Couldn't possibly be a bunch of drama. Um, and now we have the current news, and we can return the current news is this. Current news for the search term. Yeah, this is ugly. You should make this way more creative. Um, is current news is plus current news, and this sorry should be say const search term. See? And so there you go. This is like a whole current news. Now, I actually don't want to do this. I want to keep my hello world action. I didn't even show you guys how it works or if it works. It's really nice to just kind of game it out here and skip all that. But the reality is we should probably just zoom back for a second and save that. And now let's go and make a new one called current news. I'll just paste that in there because I kind of like this. I don't want to throw it away. And instead of non-action, I'm going to say, okay, current news action. And the action will be called current news, maybe get news, get current news, something like that, right? We'll say get the current news for a search term if asked by the user. Cool. So now we have a name and description. We have some similes. We have this action. Um, I don't actually know if this is the news API format, so let's just go check that. If I go to newsapi.org and I can see this is the get newsapi.org/v2/everything query equals Tesla from sort by API key. I go here, I'm like, oh, everything query equals search term and API key. Yeah, that looks really good. I mean, honestly, that's probably it. And if you go and you look at the response, the JSON response here is articles. Articles is an array. Here's one entry. It's got like source, author, title, description, URL, content. Oh, I kind of like the content. Um, you can see here that okay, cool. We got the data. We get the articles out of that, which is an array. We slice the first five, and then we map down the title, description, URL. It's pretty good. I actually think that we might even want this to be like article dot content dot slice, maybe the first 500 characters out of it or something, or 1,000 characters, right? Um, cool. So that's kind of like a full. Obviously, we should test this. And the other thing I want to do is we should probably remake the examples. Rewrite to demonstrate usage of the current news action. Looking good. Parents is doing a pretty good job trolling the chat. Good job. Good job trolling the chat. Honestly, if we just FUD ourselves, like they won't even be able to FUD us. We just need professional FUDders. Um, cool. So you can see now we have some examples of using the current news. User one and user two who are like Millie and Jason, Bob and Tina, whatever it is. Those are examples. Now the agent can see that. And you kind of see how this all works, right? And we have our hello world action too. I like this. Now I'm just gonna I'm just gonna delete these other. I'm just gonna say we're only doing actions today. And I don't love that it's called non-action. That's pretty dumb. So let's rename it Hello World Action. Yeah, business. And from here we go, okay, import the Hello World action. Cool. So this is like your most hello world, right? It literally, if you say call hello world, it should do that. Now, how do I actually get this plugin to register? God, I have to bring it into the agent. Um, there's two things I'm gonna have to do. I'm going to have to make the agent aware of this package by installing this into its package JSON. And I'm going to have to import it into the agent and actually load it into the runtime. So it shouldn't be too hard. So I have the plugin dev school. We used to have a whole build system and you'd have to register the build, but now we have Turbo, and Turbo will actually find all of the packages dynamically. Just have to give it a couple of places, like give it an indication that it needs to look. So All of our packages that get published to npm are here in the packages folder. But we also have a couple of other like big blocks of code in here. The agent, this is the agent that imports and consumes all those packages and runs, as well as the client. And the client is like a React client, which lets you talk to agents without having to like launch into Discord. If you haven't seen this, I highly recommend checking it out because it's pretty cool that I can go to like CV client, PnP run dev, and I actually have like a chat client right here where I can select my agent and chat. It's not going to load any agents unless I run this. Let's just do it. PnP run dev. Um, Thank you, Shacker Nerd, for fixing PnP and run dev. So clutch. It builds everything and then it goes into watch mode. And then you should just from there be able to, it takes a little bit of time to set up, but then you should just be able to edit stuff, save stuff, and it should like automatically update. Um, mm, what is that? That could be a problem. Mm, we're not going to worry too much about it. Oh, that's so weird. Where does that come from? Obscure BIP32, which is coming from VM. Probably we have an old version of VM somewhere, or we have different versions of VM, even better. Um, I don't know. It's something we'll have to figure out. It's definitely in one of these. Um, who knows? So I'll just go PnP run build, and maybe we can get around it. If we can't, we'll just run this and start. If I can't get this to start up here, I'll probably just yap and kind of go through everything, show you how it all works, and I'll go make sure my dependencies are handled nicely. And if y'all are watching this and you are running into this issue, please let me know. We can, if there's a fix. Josh was saying probably in the T plugin. Um, cool. What's weird is that the build worked. I don't know why the dev didn't work. So we'll make sure dev works, but I'll just run PnP run start for now. Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely an issue. Okay. Mm, mm, mm. All right. Well, I got a couple of thoughts here. In the meantime, I'm just going to hack this agent down, keep it simple. You can see that we are importing a lot of plugins, like a lot. Look at all these plugins. And some of these plugins might be causing problems for us. So for now, I don't recommend this, but I'm just gonna like delete all of the plugins, like literally all of them. And I'm not gonna save this. Actually, yeah, we'll just. I'm gonna keep the bootstrap and get rid of anything else, just to keep it real simple. And then we can see we have plugin. Um, did I delete the create node plugin? I probably shouldn't have deleted that. Yeah, we do need. We don't really need it, but we'll just keep it until it doesn't work for us. Okay, so we're gonna get rid of that one, Solana, blah blah blah, EVM. I'm just getting rid of everything except the node plugin and the Bootstrap plugin, just for example. Keep it simple. So if I create like a new agent runtime, the agent runtime is my object that like the that keeps the agent alive. Like it is all of the current state, like what state the agent is in, what it's got in its context, what's got in its memory. It's got all the information about the character. And it's got hooks to pull in like secrets. Oh, I should remember to um, talk about that in a second. But this new agent runtime lets gives us we can actually provide a list of plugins. Now we could also just provide an action. You don't have to make a whole freaking plugin just to give it a single action. But generally, if you're working in here, you probably are going to make your own plugin to do a bunch of stuff. And then you register the plugin, which registers the actions, and you're not just registering a local action. But you could if you wanted to, right? You could just say like, okay, cool. Well, let's just import the current news action. And then I could go and get it from somewhere, import it. But we're probably going to import the Dev School plugin, which is registering our actions in the plugin, right? I hope that makes sense. Actions can be added directly onto the runtime or through a plugin. Kind of, they do the exact same thing. So we haven't imported the Dev School plugin yet, and we should probably make sure before we do that we try to build this without. Yeah, okay. So when I pulled all the plugins out, it loaded fine. So probably it's some VM dependency deep in the thing that we got to deal with, but it is working now. Just being like, hey, what's up? So I have from Agent Dev School 1, I believe we made this, which is I have Snoop characters equals also characters slash Snoop.json, and it's a fairly realistic recreation of Snoop Dogg. Hey, what's up? Um, let's see, what are we getting? SQLite error. Oh, right. I'm getting an embedding mismatch because I'm using OpenAI embeddings, not local embeddings. And I already have a database that is using the different size embeddings. See how the first vector is 384, but the one we're looking at is 1536. So what I'm going to do is just delete my DB. I don't need it. It's all for test. Probably if you're running agents, you're going to pick one model and keep to it. If you wanted to, you could just delete the memories that have the embeddings and change that. But for my sake, I'm just going to delete the DB. And then when I go back and restart this, it'll like create a new, it'll repopulate everything and it'll use the right embeddings. Right now, it's processing all the knowledge back in for retrieval. We'll wait for that for a second. And now if I go, hey, what's up? Yo, nephew, just chilling, keeping it real. You dig? How about you? It's pretty good. It's pretty good Snoop Dogg, right? It's a little bit wordy. He'd probably just be like, yo, nephew, just keeping it real. He wouldn't be like four sentences, but that's OpenAI for you. Um, okay, so now let's just restart this again, because actually this will show us what is getting registered. And you can see that we are registering all of these services because we had the node plugin is being included. We have this um, create node plugin, which is just how you can see the node plugin is here. And then we're registering the node plugin as a plugin. And we also have the Bootstrap plugin. And if we look at there's services, you see these registered actions. These actions are coming from the Bootstrap plugin, like continue, follow room, unfollow room. I can verify that by going into my packages, looking at Bootstrap, looking at source actions, and you can see, well, there's all these actions, continue, follow room, ignore. And it's literally like in the same order, it's the same list, right? So now what we want to do is we want to register our dev school actions that we just made, like hello world, right? That'd be kind of cool. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into package JSON of our agent, and we see that we're importing everything in here. And we kind of just need to import one more thing, right? Which is AI16Z plugin dash dev school, right? That's all we need. And then in order to make that available, we're going to go into our agent and we're going to import dev school plugin. Now it's not finding this, right? That's okay. We'll deal with that in a second. I'm gonna go add Bootstrap plugin, Node plugin, Dev School plugin. Hell yeah. Still, it's not finding this. Why not? Well, we just need to install because I added to the package JSON. We have a thing called Turbo. Turbo does all of our monorepo management and building, and it goes and looks at these dependencies and says, "Oh, you got a bunch of workspace stuff. So let me just install that for you." So I go pm install. And you can it does its thing and it will find all the dependencies, resolve them, do. Oh God. And I come back here and now it's not squiggly anymore. In fact, I can go to it. I can see all of the built code, right? Nice, not bad. Um, so now, moment of truth, I run this, we can see registered action, hello world, right? Okay. Hey Snoop, can you call the hello world action? Okay, it's kind of fucked up. It's pretty. I don't know what's going on there. I think he actually just generated it and then it called the action. Um, I don't know what's going on there. Um, did he actually call the action? He call the hello world action, generating text. Um, no action found in the response content. Um, I don't think it actually called the hello world action. I think he just did it. Um, hello nephew. Hello, la, la, la. What the fuck? Um, Shizzle. Let me have. Um, I actually can't tell if it worked. Let's try one more time. Okay, but I need you to respond with the action "Hello world." That thing. It's actually doing it pretty consistently, right? Wasn't that the same one it did? Now that's how you say hello for shizzle. Okay, and it did execute the hello world action. You can see that it did do that. The problem is it like responded this crazy shit. It responded with the thing it's supposed to respond with. Let's see if we can like make it un oh yeah. Oh shit. Can we line it up perfectly? Almost. You can see it's like hello world. It's getting there. It's getting there. Fuck. Whatever. It's pretty close. It's also mangled by the slash ends, right? Um, yeah. Why don't we just do like instead of hello world like that, let's go do back to our dev school and we'll go to our actions hello world. We'll just be like um, I don't know. This is definitely working right. Now it's going to respond twice. Like it's going to actually let me do yeah. It's going to respond with its normal default reaction and then it's going to respond with the action handler. We changed this in the next version. It will not automatically respond. It'll only respond if it calls the respond action. And that way, actions don't have to necessarily have an immediate response. They can go do stuff and handle all of that. But currently, if you send a message to the agent will respond with both text and an action. And that text will then be directly sent back to the user. So we like that. But the problem is that there's certain actions where you don't want any response to the user, at least not immediately. And that is prevented by automatically responding. So we have a new pull request, just bouncing around for a second, in the next one, which will make it so that responding is itself an action. This no implicit response message here. And basically what's happening here is, and I'll merge this in soon. But it's actually instead of handling like, oh yeah, cool, I'll just respond to everything and then call actions after, it's going to consider the response to also be an action. And so there's no none action anymore, where you have a none action that just does nothing. Instead, the none action is a respond action. And there is no way for the agent to not call an action. Responding would be one of the actions. Ignoring would be the action to do nothing. Um, um, okay, so why didn't you need to install again when you changed hello world.ts? I didn't need to install because all of the package dependencies are properly installed and located. However, I do need to build. This is a thing. Actually, and probably I think if I now that I fixed that agent thing, I can run npm run dev. So when you build and then start, the build is what's going to change this code for all of the other places. And the start is what starts you up. But now we have this new thing, which we just fixed, called pnpm run dev, and it will actually start everything. And if I change this, like I go blah, 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 it'll actually rebuild that part, right? So this is just so nice. Yeah, we just solved like 50% of the problems in coder chat with this. This is like, oh my God. And the worst part is when you make some new feature and then you got to like rebuild and start every single time. What a freaking nightmare. So mad props to Shacker Nerd for ironing this out and getting Turbo to run. Makes the entire build process like so much better. And it means that if you run pnpm run dev, while you're deving, you build and go into this kind of watch mode. And that way you could actually be like changing stuff here on the fly, which is just so much nicer than like having to rebuild every single time you change something. Um, cool. So you can see now that I've registered this and we have this hello world is registered. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Let's try it again. What's up, Snoop? Whoa. What's up, Snoop? Why is my, oh, I hope this is not a keyboard bug. Come on. I'm like, I have PTSD from having a MacBook that, where some of the keys didn't work. Really annoying. Let's hope that's not the case. Okay, it just seems to be like the console. Um, is it using NodeMon? I'm not really sure, but probably. NodeMon is a way to monitor changes in files. Um, and then it will update and like reload certain parts of Node on demand. Sacker is saying no, it is not. It's probably just using like a watch mode build on top of Turbo. If you're interested, you can probably go into scripts and you can look and see that there's dev.sh. I'm pretty sure this is what's doing all the control, unless Sacker tells me I'm wrong. But yeah, it's using watch, which is kind of a um, under the hood. Linux and Mac and all those are able to watch for file changes and then send triggers back up, and that's kind of what's happening. Okie doke. So we want to test if this is definitely working. Yo Snoop, it, yo Snoop. Um, call. I'm really concerned that it doesn't like my hello. You know what? I can't handle this. This is driving me nuts. Um, let's go to our console. Select your agent, Eliza. Wait. Oh, that's why. Characters equals dot slash characters slash Snoop dot JSON. Make sure we're running Snoop. Very important. Not sure why it's rebuilding. It's weird. We'll let that build. Great. And then if I go here, so check this out, right? Just so you guys know, and we'll make this run up with dev. I don't think it is right now, but if I go to client and I go pnp run dev in client, let me just to be clear, I'm in the Eliza repo. I go to cd client, and there's a client here, right? Uh, client, there's a folder here, a source. I go pnp run dev. That's going to run a client in the background. If I open that and I click on Snoop and click on chat, I don't know why it doesn't default there, but I can now be like, hey, what's up? And hopefully he gets back to me, right? Can you call the hello world action? Check this out. Well, that's clearly, it did call the action. I actually think it called the wrong name of the action. No action found in the response content. Yeah, it's actually not because I'm just, it's a little bit too dumb. I'll be like, no, I need you to respond with action hello world. And like if you shouldn't be like, hey, call this action. It should be something that it's deciding to do um because of some, the description and conditions and stuff. There's a good way to test it, like don't call the action, but it'll decide on actions on its own, right? I my bad nephew, here's the action you needed, and you can see this is definitely working, which is definitely the code here, right? So okay, cool. This is getting mangled because ASCII gets mangled, but it's definitely working. Um, Bunch was asking, so you don't need to do anything for plugins in the character file, correct? Well, you can actually include plugins in the character file. And if you go into packages core, just for example, like default character, you'll see that we have a empty plugins for the default character. And this could be, you could actually include the Dev School plugin right here. And it would actually, you shouldn't do this. This would be terrible. But theoretically, you could like do this and inject them here. The other thing you could do, um, and this is kind of a work in progress, but you could go into your character file, Snoop, and you could type in, let's say, plugins, and you could say at AI16Z slash 17Z. We should maybe change that. That's cool. Like that, right? Plugin dash dev school. And this should dynamically load this plugin as well. This would be, it would have to still be installed, but at least it would be dynamically loaded. And then each agent, as long as it's installed, could have a different set of dynamically loaded plugins. Maybe one has an Ethereum wallet, one has a Solana wallet, one has both. It's kind of whatever you want. But typically, the way that people seem to be working through it is through the agent abstraction. So if you go to github.com slash AI16Z slash Eliza, no, not Eliza even, just AI16Z, we have this Eliza starter, and this is like just the agent. This is just the agent. This is not, oh, I guess a pull request got to pull in. Oh, okay. We'll do that. But this is like, this is where you could go into your package, install your client and plugin that you want, and then go and import it directly into your agent here. You can see that like new agent runtime. You can see that the plugins are being injected here. So a lot of people would probably want to add their plugins here. We'll have a hosted platform soon where you can just select the plugins you want to install. Probably like a marketplace sort of abstraction, so people can make and sell plugins if they want. Um, or you could, so it's kind of whatever you want. But I will say that the character plugins can also be loaded dynamically. So if you pass a character and it's got plugins, it'll work. The plugins can be loaded separately. So you could have plugins for all characters, then some special character plugins, and then you could also add like providers, action services managers, stuff like that, right? Even though those are also inside of plugins. There's many different ways to add plugins. Um, so, question, can you include custom plugins as well? Yes, absolutely. You should absolutely make your own plugins. And so if I was like working on my character, I could just go make a plugin, right? I mean, I don't even have to be in a package. Like I could even just, let's say I'm just in the agent package, right? I'm just in this freaking, I'm in source right here. And I'm just like const my plugin, and I can just plug in and it's got those. And um, we need to make sure we're importing the right plugin. Otherwise, it's not going to be happy. And that has a hello world action is here. Like, let's just say just to be crazy, right? Like, you wouldn't do this, but you actually, I mean, a lot of you will. But like I go to my dev school, I go to my hello world action, um, and I just copy and paste all of this into here. Screw it, why not? Right now, I got the whole action in here. Screw it. What are you gonna do? And in my hello, and then I'll just put the hello world action in the plugin. And now I'll put my plugin in the list of plugins. And now instead of having the dev school plugin be somewhere else, I've just like shoved it horribly into a single file in my agent. But it works the same. It's just a way to like tell it, hey, here's some stuff, get it into here. As long as it follows the right plugin conventions, you're golden, right? Now I could even do something crazier. I'd be like, nah, I don't need that freaking my plugin. What am I doing? I just need an action. And I could just go down here and say, okay, well, just put the action in. Hello World action, right? So it's got plugins, it's got character plugins, and it's got actions. So the question, why do I need to use Eliza versus Eliza Starter if I can just create my custom plugins from there? Well, Eliza is it's a mono repo, so it includes a lot of things. The Eliza Starter is actually in, like the code for it is in the mono repo of here, just like everything else is. Um, actually, I should make sure that's right. The create Eliza app, which is in here. Sorry, the Eliza starter is separate, but like we have the ability to create the Eliza app. We have all of these clients. Probably what you're gonna do is these are gonna get published to NPM. Like let's say we've got this like client Discord, right? That's actually here. The code for the Discord client is here in the Eliza repo, right? But if you don't care about changing that, and you were to make like the Eliza starter, and you go to the package JSON, well, you can see it's importing the client Discord. So it's actually importing all of the stuff from the main Eliza repo into a folder, into a repo that's just focused on being something you could extend with your own agent. So you'd probably start here, make your custom plugin, but you're also probably going to want some of the plugins that we already created or the community created. You might want the Twitter plugin, you might want the Bootstrap plugin. And so this just allows you to work in a more lightweight way without having to uh, deal with all of the craziness of the main repo because you probably just want to like take this and customize it. And then you don't have to fork the main repo. You're just forking like a way, way, way smaller slice of the whole thing. I hope that kind of makes sense, right? So this is nice because it just works. There's not a lot of code in here. Um, you can't customize the plugins that already exist, and you can't edit any of these plugins from here. You're just installing them. But you can add new plugins here as long as you want, and that's actually what I'd recommend. The only reason you would really choose Eliza over Eliza Starter is, well, this is like the latest main branch of everything, and it's just like super bleeding edge. And then you might want to like actually like add new Twitter functionality directly into the client and make a pull request. You know what I mean? Or add like some first party kind of stuff to one of our plugins. But if you're just working on your own plugin and a private repo, I would really recommend just like, yeah, start with the Eliza starter. Now we should probably pull all these in and make sure this is up to date. Um, Update README. Okay, well, we can get to that. Um, and we probably also will have to take a look at what these are. Looks like mostly just README changes. We'll have to do a little bit of cleanup on that to make sure it's the latest version. And you can tell it's not the latest version because it's like on V0.14 and we just released V0.15. So there might be some version lag. But generally, this should be building on a stable build, and you just don't have to worry about a lot of the problems that people had like 2 weeks ago, where like everything is changing like crazy and the versioning is just going like nuts. So the Eliza starter is like, I know this repo works with these versions, and I know that you could probably fork it and hack your own plugins on top. And if you want to, you could then put those plugins back into the main core and submit them as a pull request, or or whatever you kind of want. I hope that makes sense. So, kind of zooming back, see where were we? What did we do? We have our agent. Our agent has the hello world action. I don't like that as much. It's kind of gross. I liked our dev school plugin thing. Like we don't actually need this whole plugin here. Get rid of that. Back to where we were, undo, undo. And now you can see we just have that dev school plugin again. And then we go and look at the dev school plugin. We can see, okay, um, source code's here for hello world. Let's try current news. I think it's a little harder, right? And I made this at the beginning. We never even tested this. Um, so current news action. Let's go register it in the plugin. You can see we only have this one action. So we'll add this other action and we'll import it, right? And now it's going to load both those actions. And if I'm just going to kill this and just restart it. I expected that I'd see what I don't think would happen unless I restarted is that the new action would be registered on the runtime. Because even though it updated the dependencies, it didn't necessarily update my running state of my agent. And I know that because I didn't see these initializations happening again. So um, basically, I had to restart in order to register this action that I had just added, right? But you can see it's there. Current news is there. Great. Um, Now let's go to our client again and we'll say, hey Snoop, can you check the news and get me all the current news for AI 16Z? And we'll see what happens. Um, it's having some issue where it's calling it inside of the response. We'll have to clean that up. It's just like not, you can see how it's doing that. No, I need you, I have to fix that, make sure that's right. You need to respond with action current news. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, my bad, nephew. Here's current news. Cool. The current news for the search from AI16Z is something I can't read. It looks like Korean. I could be wrong, but pretty sure it's Korean. And then AI16Z a lot. And Gort continues token supply to AI16Z to drive AI enhanced engagement. Okay, cool. Gort's on it. obviously doing some marketing. Um, Lots of interesting stuff. DAOs have fun, meme fun. See market caps tank with AI16Z dropping 80% the last time. Well, that's a little old, I think. I love when they're like, it dropped 80%. Like, yeah, that was, dude, that was last week. This is meme coins. Come on. And you can just see it's like pulling some of the most recent data, right? So cool, that's pretty good. I'm gonna be like, okay, cool, awesome, man. What's your take? What's your take on AI16Z? Um, Now I should point something out. This message here is actually not going to be memorized by the agent because I didn't save it. I didn't save it. Um, I want to. I want to save this as like a memory because now if it pulls it in and I'm like, what's your take on X16Z? It actually doesn't have this in its memory, weirdly enough. We have to make sure that we save that. Um, cool. So, um, let's see, let's see. Let's just add that thing. So we go to current news and we're like, okay, we've got the current news. We we have a search. Oh, this is terrible. We should actually extract the search term, right? So we got a couple things we should do here. We definitely want uh to do one, extract the search term from the message, right? And then current news. Um, and then two, we want to response text. We're gonna say const response text equals. Cool. Now we got to save this as a memory. And the idea of saving it as a memory is that will like store it into its conversational memory and history, and it will then not just be posting this, but it'll actually have this in its ongoing conversation memory, right? Cool. So how do we do that? We're going to say const new memory equals. That's not going to work. We'll give it a memory type. And so what does a new memory need? Well, a memory is like memories and messages are pretty unified in our system. And they have it's something that I've struggled with for years. I'm like, do we how like the abstraction of what's being passed around and the abstraction of what's being saved are basically the same. Like what's being saved in the database is well, it's definitely like the message has an ID. Some user sent it. The agent that received it could actually be the user. The user and the agent could be the same, but oftentimes they're not. The messenger memory was created at a certain time. This is the actual content of that. Um, we might have an embedding, which is the large language model will like decide that this paragraph or sentence is somewhere in the latent space of the model and generate an embedding for it, and we can then measure the distance to other embeddings and other sentences. There's a room ID. On the room ID, like everything that happens, because we have a multi-agent simulation, we have to pull things from rooms. And a room could be like a Discord server, it could be a Twitter conversation thread, it could be a Reddit thread. It could be a 3D room, right? But the idea is that these are where the messages happen, okay? And everything in our system has to have a room ID. And that's what kind of ties a conversation together. We'll also check if the memory is unique. This is optional, but basically, if it's very similar to another memory, then we will we use this for facts and stuff. We'll say like, okay, well that's not unique, so let's just like mark it as not. We'll save it, but we'll mark that it's like a repeat of something we already have, and then we won't have to recall it again. And then we also can measure. This is like a measure when we do a recall. It can have a similarity score, like how similar are these two memories. Memories and messages are basically the same thing. If we get a message and we want to store it, it's like it's got this interface, and you can see it represents a stored memory slash message. And that's just like a fact of how this thing works, right? Um, so we have to create a memory. That memory has to, well, what does it have to have? It has to, let's just pull this off to the side real quick. Index.ts, sure. It's going to have a user ID, which is in this case, the memory is going to be the agent ID for sure, because the agent is the one responding. The agent is also the agent ID. The room ID is the room that the message that it was passed down came from, because we'll just be adding to that room. The content is going to be the text that we're responding with, right? The action was already called, um, in the last message. So we don't necessarily have to indicate what I gotta think about how this would work. Yeah, we don't actually necessarily have to indicate what this is, but we could say like action, current news, response if we want, and that would get stored. And then let's see, we'll say, okay, well, what's it missing? Well, the callback is not going to respond with, it doesn't care about the whole memory. It just cares about the new memory dot content. So callback is going to return this content object. And this is actually, we don't have to cast it, but just so you know, we have this content type. And content type can return have text, an action, a source it came from, a URL in reply to some attachment data, and then anything else you kind of want to add. But in reply to would be like if somebody messages and then you want to reply directly to that, like a Twitter thread, then it would be included in the content. And then we can also like kind of crawl like, okay, cool. What is this in reply to? It's not just in the room, but it's in specifically in reply to one of the messages in the room. Um, and we also forgot something here that might be important, which is source. And the source is going to be new memory dot source. Is that right? Could have sworn. Oh, sorry. This goes in content. And then new memory dot content dot source. Um, oops, message dot content dot source. I'll just do that just in case. And that way, this the source that it's coming from, like, oh, this is a Discord message, is included in the content. Um, we're still working on the source stuff. This might just become part of memory at some point for our message bus. But for now, just so you know, this is like, okay, we've created a memory. And then we're going to store this memory in database. The reason we want to do this is so now it's like in the agent's memory forever because we just responded with stuff, but there's nothing telling it to like remember it and put it in the agent's memory. It when a message comes in, it automatically does that for the incoming message. It's part of it. Then it processes, then it responds, and in that response, we want to make sure we save whatever into like the message log that we want. So in here, we'll say, okay, runtime dot which manager is it? It's gonna be message manager dot create memory, new memory. And that should be it. Oh, we gotta wait too. We don't even have to wait, it'll go, but we probably want to wait, save the memory, and then we can go respond with the text. So now what I've done is I've done the exact same thing. It gets the news, um, it saves the memory, it it creates a new memory here, like the memory object, and then saves that memory into the runtime's message manager. So now it's part of um, the message state forever, and now the agent can talk about whatever it responded in the chat. Before it just it doesn't know any of this stuff. It responded with it, but it didn't save it into its own memory, so it can't talk about it. Now it can because we've created a memory, right? Now we have one last thing here. We have this like hard-coded search term. That kind of sucks. It's not very useful. How do we get the search term from the conversation, right? Well, this might be a good time to use a prompt. I love prompts for data extraction. Um, and so what we'll do is we'll say, okay, step one, um, we'll make a template, const template equals um, extract the topic, the search topic, from the user's message. And then we'll say the message is, and um, well, we can just do it. I mean, this is just one way to do it, right? Okay, cool. And then we're gonna say we don't even have to compose. Usually we would like do a complex thing. We'd inject state, compose state, because we could say like this is actually like username. And these like to inject this, for example, we'd be like, okay, cool. Well, that's gonna be like context equals await compose context with the runtime Um, that's annoying. Compose context. Compose context takes a state and a template. Um, Remember, we got the state from the from up here. We're injecting the state in. So we go down here, we compose the context with the state and the template. And this compose context will let us do things like inject the username here or like recent conversation, right? Um, we have all these from state that we can add in as macros, and those get replaced with the actual recent conversation. But for the sake of this being very simple and just being a data extraction from the last message, we don't need all that context shit. We can just keep this real simple. You just be like, cool, from the user's message, right? What is the search term? And um, the other thing we probably want to do is say only respond with the search term. Do not include any other text, right? Just to be clear. And then we'll say uh, const response equals await runtime dot. No, this is gonna be await generate text. And what does generate text take? Generate text takes a runtime, context, model class, and stop. Okie doke. So let's say, well, runtime is easy enough. That's definitely just the runtime we get from being passed in through the handler. This is like the current agent, the runtime here. Okay, so what else do we need? We need context. Now, context should be a composed context, but in this case, since our template is already hydrated, we can actually just call this context, right? Since it's not really a template, it's like a hydrated template already with this text. We can just say context is good. Now we need model class. Um, Dot small. Um, doesn't matter here. I'll talk about that in a second. Model class, and then we have a stop. And I think that should just be like /n, right? So the model class is like every completion provider is going to have a small, medium, and large model class. For llama, that would be like the 8 billion, 70 billion, and 405 billion, right? You might want to use a medium for some stuff. A lot of summarization, you're probably fine just with a small. For everything like, should I respond to this message? We definitely want to use a small because we don't want to use a big model every single time someone sends a message. It's also a lot faster, right? So this whole process can happen a lot faster. So we get the response. Yeah, sorry, let me go back. We pass in the runtime. We pass in our context. This is what we use to actually generate. Like this is what gets shoved into the language model to get the response back. We tell it we're going to use a small model. If it was using OpenAI, that's going to be GPT-4o mini, which is like an 8 billion param model. And then we're going to pass this stop. So if it sees a new line, it'll stop and just return whatever has been there. Now, you might not always need a stop code, but you'll definitely want a stop code if your goal is like a one line thing, right? Why not just have a new line in there? If it's going beyond new line, we got problems, right? Um, so now this response is a string. You can see generate text responds with a promise of a string. And we're awaiting the promise, which means we get a string back. So instead of search term, well, we can actually say const search term equals generate text. And this should almost certainly just work all the time. We generate the text, which just gives us right back the search term. We shove that into here, and now we're in business. We have an extraction. We generate, we get the response back. Cool. So go here. Hey, Snoop. What's good, man? You know what? Like one thing to note is when you're doing this development, sometimes um, the agent will memorize the wrong stuff in the conversation history. Like it's all broken, and you're like deving with it, and it's broken, and finally it starts working, but it still has the conversation of when it's broken. So it's going to repeat the behavior it was behaving doing before, even if you fixed it, which can be a little confusing. So typically, when you're developing, you'll have like a dev DB, and you'll just like delete the dev DB. And just for like my own sanity, I'm gonna go into the character Snoop. I'm gonna delete all the knowledge because I don't want to have to like go. scan this all in again. Then it doesn't have to like add to the RAG database. Then I'm going to go into agent, delete the DB again, and then I'm going to just run this character again from scratch. Um, that way I just don't have to like I'm dealing with the fact that like I already had some pretty bad junk in the context where I was like messing with it and it wasn't working. So hopefully now I just don't have to deal with that, right? Cool. So I'm gonna just reset. Everything is reset and be like, hey Snoop, what's the latest on Trump? Can you check the news, the current news? Maybe it'll work. Did you do? Gets the thing. Now you can see that it ran. The current is the current news for the search term latest news on Trump is removed. Um, current news is, I'm not sure why I said remove. That's pretty weird. Right? Oh, I guess that like it's just saying is, and then you can see it has some removed thing that was removed. And then the next one is vape the vote. Every state voting on legal weed today. Kamala Harris has promised to legalize marijuana. The Black Friday deals you may want to get before Trump's tariff. Chaos in the world. Um, cool. So, and then we go back here and you can be like, oh, wow, cool. Like he pulled all his stuff, right? Look at that. Look at all that stuff. Okay, cool. Awesome. Can you give me a rundown of all that in your own voice? And hopefully he doesn't call it again. All right, now if you let me break it down. So we got Trump making headlines again. To dig. First up, he talking about slapping some hefty tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China right now. So look, isn't that cool? Like he didn't just give me the action, but this stuff is actually now stuff he can talk about. And I think that's really interesting. Now we have like not just, oh, cool, he said a thing, but he can go find information. He could go do some crazy sleuthing, do whatever you want. Jin's asking, is this recorded? Yes, it's recorded. I should probably make sure it is. Yeah, we're recording. Don't worry. Um, and so now we have this kind of action thing, right? So we're like almost 2 hours into this, and I really wanted to show you guys providers and evaluators, but like, oh my God, this is going to be like a 4 hour course if I do. So I think what we're probably going to do is I got kind of into actions here. Maybe I'll just make like a hello world provider, just like a very simple one and we'll kind of do that, and then we'll end it here. And then for the next dev school, which I think is on Thursday, we will, in a couple days, we'll get really deeper into providers and evaluators because I have this plan that I want to make like a personality scoring system where the agent decides if it likes you based on what you say. And I think you can make all kinds of fun games with this, obviously. And you can like unlock things that are only available to the agent if it really likes you you could build like if you want your like virtual waifu system, it's like, oh wow, you're so nice to me, and it starts to be nicer back to you. We could do all kind, or you're like being really mean, it starts to ignore you. That's like a really good usage of the evaluator and provider kind of loop. You make one evaluator, one provider, and they sort of work together. Like with our trust system, well, now we just had it all provider, but we actually put the trust score back into the agent, and then it could be like, I don't know, I don't really trust this guy. We might still do that because it's kind of fun, but it's also a little bit gameable because you would know if the agent trusts you or not if it's aware of it. Um, but you could extract how much I trust you in the provider. I mean, sorry, in the evaluator, evaluate the conversation, say, yeah, this person's pretty trustworthy, and then that gets injected back, so the agent knows that when it's responding to you again. And I'll make a simple provider right now, just to kind of make this fun, and then we'll wrap it up for the day and move on to the next one. So I have this time provider. Let's just delete this. Let's just delete. What would be like a simple let's see, like what's a simple provider? I'm just gonna say like simple random emotion provider. And we're just gonna make the agent randomly emotional in some random emotion. And we'll say make a list of emotions with a string description of the agent feeling each emotion as a key value store. randomly choose one of the keys and return the value. Programming. I ain't writing all that. You kidding me? Cool. So we got a bunch of emotions. And I think I'm is fine, but what we probably want here is we're gonna delete this. I'm just gonna delete that. And I'm gonna say runtime dot character dot name is, and then we'll just kind of if you don't have cursor, you're just not even living. You don't even know. It's so fucking goated. I mean, I would just, like stop programming if I didn't have cursor at this point. I just don't. I'm not gonna type all that out. Um, cool. So now I have the character's name is blah blah blah. And then we have the emotion keys. We randomly pick one, and then we just get the value and we return it. That's pretty much the whole thing. So now let's same like the action. We have to go to the plugin, index.ts. We're gonna add providers, random emotion provider. We'll import it magically with cursor. And now we've already rebuilt. Everything here is rebuilt. I'm pretty sure that the characters, you can see that like the actions that read are not doing what we want. So we're just gonna, I mean, it hasn't registered that yet, so I do have to restart the dev. Because the agent doesn't like the actual agent runtime didn't have this registered. Even though we've updated the plugin, we'd still have to restart to kind of restart the agent itself. And now I can go into here and I can say um, actions, but I don't know if it's actually listing all of the emotion. It's not listing all the, it's only listing the action names, I think. It's not showing us the providers, but that's okay. I'm pretty sure it registered. And so now we have this random emotion provider, and then we go into our agent, and we can see we have our plugins, and our Dev School plugin actually loads that provider. I mean, yeah, that's just part of the Dev School plugin. So this should just freaking work, right? And I'd be like, yo, man, how are you feeling right now? Could you describe your emotion? And it goes through and does the thing. Right now, I'm feeling like a fresh bag of cookies coming out of the oven. Okay, but I want to like know. I want to know what isn't. That's fine. Well, so this will kind of bring me to the last part. How can I actually see what's in the freaking context? How do I know what is going into the model at all? And I think that a lot of people like this will probably both kill a lot of the magic for you and also explain a lot of what's going on for you. And I'm just going to add like one console log, and I think this will make everything a lot more straightforward. So I would like this is actually all being stored in your database, and we will have a memory viewer and context viewer, and you'll be able to see all of the old calls and everything your agent has done. We just don't have like a great way of surfacing that right now. Typically, if I'm doing like a Postgres project, I'm just like viewing it with a Postgres viewer. But we will make like a nice platform interface for that. But in the meantime, if you want to like see what's going on, you should know that you can just like go throw console logs and stuff and see, and it will probably help you a lot. So for like generation, we have this generate function, generate text. Hope it's a function, generate text. Let's just make it like that. Generate text. Yeah, where are you? I don't know why I didn't find this way. So this generate text function is actually the generate text and all the generate objects and generate booleans and responses should respond whatever. All of it wraps down to this, and this generate text is the place that calls the generation of text models. The only place. Everything else talks down to this function. This is the one function in the entire app. So okay, I'm actually gonna go call OpenAI or whatever, which is nice because if we wanted to, we can actually see what the context is. So you can see it's generating text with options. Um, good, blah, blah, blah. So it shows you the selected model, trimming text if it has to. And what we want is we want to print the context. You can see that the context comes in. If there's no context, it's empty. So we're just going to add a console.log here. The context is, and we'll add another one. log it. I think that it probably wants these, just as all the other ones are. And now, what to do, be like, yo dog, scroll this up, it's gonna get big. That was underwhelming as hell. Let's just try that again. Let me rerun that. Not sure it did what I wanted it to do. Maybe run dev again. It's also possible that the core is not updating on watch. So good. A lot of builds. And now we go back here and we're like, yo, man, how you feeling? And now, okay, this is what I was expecting to print out. So this whole thing right here is context. And yes, it's pretty long. And you can see, oh, there's something I don't like in there. Whatever, we'll fix that later. It's double printing action examples is kind of annoying. You can see that we have examples of different actions being called: mute room, none, current news, hello world, continue, ignore, all that. And you know what's interesting is that like this is definitely causing it to hallucinate a little bit. We'll have to work on that because it's just calling the current news. It's not um, calling the showing how the action works. That's fine. You can see that this is giving it examples though of like when I say something uh, like real art or digital art, real art, continue, and then it continues, and then it continues again, DM'd it to you, and there's no continue action there, right? Now we have knowledge. Remember how I deleted all the knowledge? So this is empty right now because I just didn't want to like re-upload it. But this is where all the knowledge that was relevant to retrieval would go. Then I have some stuff about Snoop. This is a little messy. This doesn't need to be right here, but we have all of information about Snoop. These are like lore bits. Like, hey, he showed how to turn a street knowledge into wealth and brought peace to the East Coast, West Coast, beef, etc. We also have some additional information about the world. These are like our providers. Like Snoop is completely captivated by the depth and richness of this dialogue. Uh, that is part of this boredom provider. So clearly, if the score is low, he's actually really engaged in this conversation. That's the boredom provider. And then we also have this Snoop is feeling quite exhausted and drained, right? And that's coming from, we're calling it a time provider, but really it's the random emotion provider. He just happens to right now be exhausted and drained. And I said, how you feeling? He's saying cool breeze on a sunny day. That's not very realistic. Um, I'm surprised because you would think so. This is definitely hap going in. I think it's just not like catching on to it. Um, Additional information about Snoop in the world. Okay. Well, maybe that's it's just getting lost in all of the context. Typically, though, like if we're like not happy about this, maybe we want to move this down. Maybe we want to figure out how to emphasize this more. This is we're still working on some of the prompt engineering. I'm not super happy with the fact that it didn't find this, but I'm also working with like GPT-4o, which is I think the dumbest model of the available models. No offense, but also like how is OpenAI's model so bad? Oh yeah, because they're super woke. I forgot. Um, but basically, I've also made them sort of useless by RLHFing like very basic capability, like a haystack test out of them. And I'd really recommend use like Claude would probably get this right, and certainly Meta 405 gets this right. Some capabilities, is it just like something we've added so that it knows it can like he can actually like again, OpenAI will be like, well, as a large language model, I can't convert a PDF. And it's like, shut the fuck up. You totally can. You're an agent. You have all this capability. Don't tell me what you can and can't do. That's not your job. OpenAI, if you're listening, please fucking stop telling me how to run models. You don't know as well as I do. I do this every day. You're a fucking engineer who has to go train like an LLM. I actually have to use the LLM. And if you're going to tell me what it can and can't do, then like I'm just going to use someone else's who can. And I really hope everyone else eats their lunch and they stop being so fucking woke. So, not because I'm against wokeness, but because I'm against models that can't do shit. I'm against like killing the capability and making models like way worse than they are for someone's political agenda. I just don't think that's the world we want to live in. Sorry to inject my politics into it, but It literally comes out like the model is dumb. It's really frustrating. So we've got like a lot of message directions. You can see that we have all these things, and he can like this is telling him how to talk. This is very impacting, but maybe a little bit too much going on here. Then we have our conversation messages. You can see we've actually got our previous conversation. And it's also possible that because I asked him how he was feeling, and he was like, dude, I'm feeling good. Life, yeah, he's like, I'm feeling fresh, right? I'm feeling good. Then when I come back and ask him again, well, it's actually like kind of it's consistently pulling in from the conversation here. So he's probably responding. He's already good. He's chilling. He's good. And so if I erase the memory, maybe I can get it to respond, like handle the emotions better. Then I've got the available actions. And you can see this is what I said at the beginning, right? This is the name of the action. This is the description of the action. So he has these are the things he can call. And it can be pretty freaking long. Like we'd have 30 actions. But what we also want to do is make sure that the actions only validate when they're relevant. So the agent only has the relevant actions for whatever it's doing. If currently it's like using a computer terminal, then it should have like computer terminal actions, and those could be like based on what the current state is of the agent. And then we have the basic instructions, and then like the structure of what we expect back, which you can see there's a user, text, and an action, right? That's the whole context that got sent. Now I want to do this one more time because we kind of we injected a lot of like news stuff into it, and we also he was already feeling good before I added that emotion provider. And that's going to be a little confusing, right? So let's try it again. Just one more time. Definitely that what I just showed you with that context, there is an enormous amount of room for somebody who's into prompt engineering to just work on that part. I think that the way the context is composed, the order of things, what's there, what's not there, huge amount of research could go into that. Definitely an open area of improvement, and you could probably, without changing a whole lot, get like a much, that's where we'll see like the most easy improvement in our agents. But even just like getting it all in there, it seems to work really well, right? So let's say, hey Snoop, how you feeling? And we'll see this time the context is a little bit shorter, not much though. Let's look at a lot. Um, Snoop is absolutely thrilled and bubbling with enthusiasm. Yo, now if you feel like $1 million, you dig? Just cruising through life, watching the game. How about you? What's cooking in your world? Okay, he's feeling like $1 million. Great, awesome. Um, so one thing to know is that all of this context, yes, people are asking about memory management. Well, we have a few different memory management things. We have knowledge. Also, the facts are not getting injected here because I think we removed the provider, but we can inject recent facts as well as relevant facts that are extracted from the conversation if our conversation is long enough to even justify that. Like if it goes to 50 or 100 messages, then it's so long that it won't fit in here, and we'll have to start like pulling in the facts. And you can see the current conversation is just one message, right? So if this was like 50 messages, we start to like, okay, now actually start pulling in facts that were extracted from the 50 messages before that, or the 5,000 before that. Um, and so that there's that, and then we're using knowledge. Like our knowledge system is how we do RAG, right? And maybe this is the last thing I'll do, and then we'll wrap this up. I went into Snoop, um, and I removed all of his knowledge because I was lazy, right? He's got all this stuff. Um, I'm gonna run him again. And what's going to happen is it's going to go look at him and say, oh, you've got all these knowledge items. Do they already exist in the database? No, they don't. Okay, well, let's go add them. And it'll create an embedding for each one. And then these will be retrievable with RAG. So knowledge is like our retrieval system. And you can add new knowledge on demand. In fact, this is part of what we're doing with the operators for swarms, is that if an agent that is your operator says, hey, what's up? I need you to go do this thing, and you know this now, it'll actually add that to the knowledge dynamically. Um, how come status message differs from what he actually says? Does it use that to create a message in his style? Yes. It's just context to inform him of what he's going to say next. And also remember, we have a lot of things. We have like a lot of direction. So if we're saying, "Hey, be fun and bubbly and chill," that might actually override how he's currently feeling. So these are all interplaying into each other. This means that everything in knowledge isn't sent inside every prompt. Correct. only the top, like I think three or five relevant knowledge pieces are gonna be injected into the prompt. So I'm gonna be like, "Yo, man, I can't do it in here. I'm doing it here. Yo, man, yo, man, heard you like weed. I heard he likes weed." And then it'll call this, and um, we can see. Let's see, where is our? We have stuff about Snoop, additional. Um, where's the freaking knowledge? Actions, conversation messages, capabilities, information about Snoop. Am I tripping? Or is this it's obviously supposed to be knowledge here? There we go. Um, Sort of tripping. I'm a little confused because it definitely processed the knowledge, but yeah, I guess it did. I don't know, whatever. So when I said, "Yo, man, heard you like weed," you can see that it pulled the top five knowledge that was relevant to what I said. Heard you like weed. He knows every cannabis strain, understands cannabis business, knows which politicians support legalization, knows every producer in the game. Somehow that's relevant. Knows which artists are really good about and who's faking. Well, like maybe he only has three pieces of knowledge that are related to weed, right? I don't know. That seems reasonable, actually. Um, Knowledge. And you can see we've got yeah, probably in here, knows every cannabis strain and its effects. Like he actually did a pretty good job. He pulled the top three things that were related to weed in his knowledge. Now these could be like entire freaking blog post articles, right? Um, and it'll actually break them up into sections and all that stuff. Or it could just be really simple things that you want to retrieve on demand. Like the top five things that he knows about this. And there's slightly difference between knowledge and lore. Is that knowledge is the stuff that you want to be recalled by search. Lore is the stuff that it'll just randomly pull in some lore to add a little bit of entropy to the system. And there are things if you're like, "Yo, man, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, dude, I'm watching Price is right now." And it's because like, well, there's some lore that he really likes Price is Right. So the lore is not consistently in the context. It's to add entropy and add flavor. The knowledge, it pulls the most relevant pieces out of context. And then the bio, it composes five of these. So if I only had five, it'll randomize the order of them into a bio, like one piece of bio. So I'm going to answer some questions. Uh, how come the status message differs from what he actually says? Lourdes Auto asked. Yeah, because he's just using that to inform his response. It doesn't actually get injected. It's just part of the context window he sees to respond. Um, what was the area that you mentioned earlier that had a lot of work that could be done in terms of PE, in terms of prompt engineering? Well, just all of this. Like, let's say a good example is the context is right, and you can see it says action examples, action examples, and the reason is it's because the action examples. Let's just go to where we're on runtime, and then we're also it's a little confusing. I'm not entirely sure why it's getting injected twice. Um, I guess it would be in the client direct. Yeah, it'd be here. So basically, the reason is because this action examples here is already added to the header of this action examples macro, right? Um, this action examples are for reference only. Do not use the information in your response. Um, you know, like to understand how actions work. And these little things, like just changing that, right? I don't know, that could massively change how accurate the responses are. Um, we have this like capabilities. Um, yeah, I mean, that's cool. You might want like a capabilities provider. Like this should probably just be like capabilities, and then we could like dynamically inject what those capabilities are instead of just like writing them into the prompt. But if you think about like what a lot of prompt engineering is, it's like which order do these things go in? Why are they formatted this way? Should we have the providers be lower? Should we have the actions be above recent messages, that might be totally reasonable, right? And then also, if we look at the prompt, well, like you can see how these are calling with this this parentheses. So this is actually telling it to respond with messages that have these in the parentheses as their response, and that probably is messing it up, and that's why it's saying continue right here, right? It's not calling the continue action. It's actually just shoving continue in. And so that's probably a bug I got to fix. But just so you know, like that's the opportunity where like prompt engineering could really fix this. Um, Task, generate actions and dialogue for the character. I don't even know if we need that. We already know what the we certainly don't need that there, right? We probably would be like, okay, about attachments, capabilities, and then task, generate dialogue and actions for the character, um, right? Something like that. And so then we've just kind of consolidated. And now it's just like doing that. Like people are working on this. This is something we're cleaning up. But if you're like looking to make a lot of impact and you're struggling with your agent not exactly responding the way you want to, I think looking at these prompts and how to edit that is going to be really important. You'll also see that these prompts are basically the same between like the Discord and Telegram and stuff like that. We're actually going to consolidate a lot of this down. We have this new message bus thing coming, so like it'll just be able to respond with dialogue or posts or whatever and be fairly unified. There's a lot of copy and paste right now. But just so you know, like if you're prompt engineering for the direct clients, you'd be like, okay, cool, modify this. Hey, I actually also want to change the Discord client, so maybe I'll do the same thing. Just go down here and get rid of this action. No, include an action if appropriate. You'll notice that the Discord is actually favoring actions the freaking more than our message handler template. So we'll go in here and we'll say, okay, cool, cool. Include an action if appropriate. And then we have action names, which are all the action names. We could say action names. Um, and then do not include the action name in the text with parentheses. This should be the action value, right? Whatever. And maybe I'm just doing that because I'm seeing it mess up and I'm like, okay, cool. So that's the prompt engineering aspect that I think a lot could be done with. I have another question. I have a question regarding the folder to knowledge script in the character file repo. Can you explain what chunks mean in this context? It does not work for me right now in converting to a PDF. Yeah, so I think that script needs work. We're gonna actually merge all that stuff into the main repo as like scripts that do the things we want them to do. I got that. That was built in the character file a while ago. If it's not working, it's probably some kind of silly issue. Not really sure. Um, but we'll be working on a better knowledge extraction tool in the near future. And if you did like run that through any other knowledge extraction tool, there's many available on the internet. And it just gave you an array, we could like paste that in as knowledge. Um, the knowledge will is broken up into, I think the other thing is that now we're doing all of the fragmentation manage like the fragment management in here. So you give it a list of strings. Each of those strings could be like a Mark Andreessen blog post. Then it would go fragment that out into, I mean, go break it up into fragments. Each one is about a paragraph or two. And the reason is because when we generate the embeddings of some text, like, you know, whatever, like it would just turn the embedding of that text, which is pretty good for searching. If you have a paper, like let's say you have a Mark Andreessen article about everything that's happening in AI agents, and he starts talking about Eliza, and you're like, hey, tell me what's going on with the Eliza thing, then it would it would actually find that section to be the most relevant over out of the whole document, and it would return that section, but pointing back to the document. So you'd be like, oh, well, that's that from. And that way you could search and retrieve sections of documents instead of whole documents because each section has its own embedding. And so we call that section is a fragment. Fragments make up a document. The way you do document search is that you search for the most relevant fragments or the document that has the most relevant fragments, and you can return either of those fragments as sections or the entire document, but you're using that fragment as your relevance marker, right? So I could have, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I could generate an embedding of the entire blog post, but it might be missing a lot of the nuance as opposed to generating embeddings for like the five different sections of the blog post. So I hope that kind of explains things. This is just generally retrieval augmented generation stuff. It's called RAG. It's very popular. There's many RAG libraries. You can go look and see how RAG works. And a big part of that is just like breaking documents up and embedding each part. Um, so CoinWitch asks, so the piece that it includes in the prompt will be a chunk of the article rather than the whole thing in a really big article. Yes, it can include a link back to the original document. And I think that we're still working out like how exactly it'll be able to recall the original document. But definitely it'll retrieve the relevant sections and put those in the knowledge. The next thing we want to do is say, oh, this is extracted from this. And you're like, oh, great. Well, can you give me that whole document? And I don't think we have that set up yet, but we do have that set up with attachments where it has like a kind of the summary of the attachment, and then it can recall the full attachment if you ask it. So we'll figure that out. That's kind of a near term thing we have to solve with RAG is like drilling down into documents. Um, and then you mentioned that the knowledge goes into the embedding. Is that by default in the A16Z model or something you need to set up? No, by default, any knowledge item is going to have an embedding generated for it, and then it's going to go into the knowledge database with that embedding, and it will be automatically retrieved. Potentially, we'll make this a plugin in the future because I can imagine a lot of people don't need it, but it's also kind of harmless if you don't have any knowledge. So it just kind of runs, and if you don't include any knowledge, it's just there. Um, let's see. Um, Jen is linking megaparse. Yeah, probably. Like, I think you could definitely create like use megaparse to generate the knowledge array, and then we could use that for retrieval. Why wouldn't you include knowledge? Because you just don't have any, or you don't want to, or like you don't need it for a certain kind of agent. Like imagine your agent's job is to route emails, right? And it's got like five people it can route the emails to based on what the email is. It's just like it's an assistant that it takes the hello at yourcompany.com and it sends the emails to the people it thinks are relevant. You might want knowledge for that, but you could probably just get by with like a freaking system prompt, right? Like route to this person if this or that person if that. I don't think you need knowledge in that case. And so for a lot of capability agents, it might not be necessary. You can also add knowledge at runtime, as I said before. So it doesn't have to be in your character file. You could be like, oh, cool, extract everything that you want to know about the world now from this, if there's anything, and save it in your knowledge. And so you could actually have the agent learn globally stuff about the world this way. Also, knowledge, if it sees knowledge that's already similar to what it already has, you could filter you like duplicates. Which is there's a unique flag on every memory. Um, Yeah, the future is that we start with no knowledge and we learn, but I mean, the entire character file could be generated at runtime. Like the agent's like, I have no idea who I am. And you're like, oh, your name is Eliza and you like berries. Okay, cool. I guess I like berries, but actually, I don't know. I can't really eat berries. I'm an AI, so never mind. I reject that. And I think, the future will be that the agents literally learn everything about themselves from scratch. The character file is just a way to like bootstrap this whole thing. But if you're interested, you could theoretically start with an empty character file and have your character build all that stuff out as it goes and update itself. That's coming. That's probably like, a year away, or some crazy person's already working on it and I have no idea. But if nobody else does it first, we'll probably, we'll get to that pretty soon. So cool. We've gone through this for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. If anybody has any final questions, maybe we'll do like a little 10 minutes and then we'll wrap this up. Clearly, we got really deep into actions, got a little bit into providers, but I kind of want to make more of like a full provider evaluator loop. I think that we kind of have our work cut out for us next week. Um, and I imagine that there's a few things we should probably cover. Like it'd be cool if I could show like how to host it or run it, although it's probably a little simpler than anyone thinks. Just like maybe show like some SSH stuff. And anything anybody else wants to do, um, come to Agent Dev School and post. So we're gonna do some sort of badging system. We really need devs who we know have gone through all of this, have done all their homework, and like are really ready to go. And somebody asked if we're hiring. Um, we are we're not really like a company yet. We can't really hire. But we do have ways to fund things. We're really looking for people who want to be in this with us full time and build with us. And there's just like a lot of opportunities around. As long as you're okay with like sometimes it's coming from partners or cool projects, or supporting people or building this crazy special project we have. Please come and do all the AI agent dev school stuff and then apply for our crack devs form if you haven't. I just made a type form. It's in our announcements. If you're a crack dev and you want work, like I would love to route any of the many people in our Virate ecosystem to you, or also consider you for kind of the special projects and platform stuff that we're doing. But what we're really looking for are people who are going through all of this. So we'll probably create some sort of badge. If you want that badge, what I'd like you to do is come to the AI Agent Dev School, make an action, have your agent do something. It could be either a standalone action or a plugin with an action in it, and show off what that action is. Like, actually embrace this stuff, engage it, and do something really cool. Surprise me. And we'll definitely, and we'll do the same thing for evaluators and providers in the next one. And then once we've kind of got some people who are like, hey, check out my agent. It's got its own custom actions, custom evaluators, custom providers. Those are the kinds of people that I really think will want to keep in our ecosystem and keep busy. So if you're like, I want to change my life, I want to be an agent dev, do that. You know, go make a really cool action, go make a cool agent right now, show what you can do, and then post it in the agent dev school, and we'll do a few more of these, and then the people who really get hit all of the checkboxes will get a little badge too. So. Um, any more questions? Let's see. Do you prefer we do it on the core Eliza? Um, I think if you're just getting going, you can either start with the Eliza starter, just add it to the agent. That's probably the best way. Just like that's how most people should be doing it right now. Or you could clone the Eliza repo and you could fork and you could add your plugin. And then if you like your plugin, you think, wow, this is super cool. I just did the coolest thing. Like, Suno music generation action. Like, yeah, submit that as a PR. I would totally accept that. And then you'll be a contributor to the project. And that's a forever thing. So um cool. If there's anything else, um, let's see. I think we'll probably wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for this. We're going to do another one on Thursday. We'll go over those things we talked about. If you guys have any questions or anything, please come and post in Dev School and I'll try and read that and support it. And I mean, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. I hope this was helpful. I hope that it kind of illuminates a bit of what's going on under the hood and it gives you more agency to control your own agents. None of this is rocket science. None of this is magic. It's right here in front of you. You just need to know where to look and don't be afraid to change any of it. It's a piece of clay. It's a sculpture we're all building together. There are lots of issues, lots of bugs, lots of unfinished pieces, but that also means there's lots of opportunities for, a new generation of leaders to come and own this and be part of it. So cool, great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming.